I'm Shane Ramey. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast. In this episode, I'm proving that addiction is not America's weakness. It's actually more the symptom of a culture that rewards numbing over responsibility. And sobriety might be the most radical performance upgrade that we're not talking about enough. So before we dive into that today, I just want to give a quick shout out to Kaylin from our Sober Guy men's community, the Victory Circle. He's celebrating 90 days alcohol-free. So shout out to Kaylin. Good stuff, bro. Keep it up. Appreciate you posting in the group. The Victory Circle. Kaylin's also doing an ice bucket challenge where he's dumping a bucket of ice water on his head in the freezing snow and the crazy winter weather every day in the month of February to raise awareness for mental health. So if you want to connect with Kaylin and more of our awesome dudes that are in the Victory Circle, it's our free online digital community. You can go to thatsoberguy.com and check that out there. All right. So the Great American Recovery Plan. Something interesting happened in the last week or so. I had a few days of vacation while we visited with some family who was out. So that was a great time spending with my family. So I would have liked to get to this episode a little bit sooner, as this came out last week, this Great American Recovery Plan that we're going to talk about today. But I think a lot of people may have missed it anyway. And so it's still relevant. And for the first time in a long time, the conversation around addiction wasn't just about punishment. It wasn't just about shame. It wasn't just about just say no. Remember that? Just say no. Back in the day, the 80s, man, the Reagan administration, just say no. Hey, I'm sure that worked in a lot of instances. I know I remember it. It was something that was kind of a staple. I feel like back in the 80s and 90s, you saw the shirts going around, but it was, it was more of a statement. I don't know that there was a lot of substance and background and support in that itself. But it was about recovery this week. It was about accountability, this Great American Recovery Plan that we heard about. And it was about rebuilding human performance overall. Like, how are you going to be at the top of your game in all aspects of your life? And one way that you're not going to do that is by habitually using alcohol, using drugs, using other substances, using other things to escape and not be at your peak performance. So what did that look like? What did last week, this Great American Recovery Plan look like? You had Trump, who signed executive orders focused on addiction and recovery. You also have RFK Jr. talking openly now about health, redesigning the food systems, the food pyramid. He's talking about the pharmaceutical industry. He's also talking about health, wellness, staying fit mentally, physically, spiritually. And of course, he's also talking about sobriety. And now, high performance, all of these things that I just mentioned, they're being discussed more at a high system level, which is wild because for decades, America's recovery plan has basically been like, have you tried like being less weak? Like, don't be a pussy. Like, you got to try harder. You got to do more. What are you going to do? How are you going to quit? How are you going to do, get some help there? Hasn't been a lot of resources provided, and plenty of resources in the private sector, I would say, but more from a broad base that a lot of people have access programs. That hasn't always been the case. And even if you look at places like California, you had millions, billions, I believe, definitely millions. I think in the billions at this point that went into different programs for recovery, for homelessness, and that money has since vanished and nobody can find it. So you have decades and decades of issues with substance abuse, homelessness, mental health illness, people who are struggling financially, physically, emotionally, mentally. And there's not a lot of resources for the mass majority of people. And the resources that were supposed to be provided were literally stolen. I mean, that's probably the most simple and best way to put it. So let's take a look at this from a new perspective here. What if addiction, what if alcohol, what if drugs, what if having a sober mind, the ability to not be able to do that, to be stuck in that cycle, what if it's not just a character flaw? What if it's not a character flaw? What if it's a predictable outcome of a culture that we've built over decades, over years? It's built on numbing. It's built on, I want it now, I want convenience. And most importantly, it's built on escape. We want to escape the reality that we're currently living in because we don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to feel. We had things happen to us in our lives that we don't know how to cope with. We don't know how to forgive, which is a huge one. We don't know how to process. And I don't think social media, and I don't think media in general, from all the, from the movie industry, the music industry, social media, commercialization of huge in sports. I think that's another great example. The consumerism. There's so much going. The algorithms that we're all locked into and that we're being fed. Why do you think they call it a feed? Because it literally feeds you shit. And you don't even know what's happening. They're creating digital footprints, digital versions of us as people. They're like everything we do online on these sites, on these social media sites. We post things, we comment, literally creating a digital version of self. And we were just talking about this as we had some family here. I said, well, we're going to die one day, and they're going to be able to take a digital version of you and use AI and be able to put it in effect to recreate you in a sense, in a digital version, because your brain will be downloaded. So I'm just sharing this because it's absolutely insane. You're going, what in the, like, are you serious? Like, maybe you've thought about this already too. And you go, yeah, I know that. Or maybe you haven't. You go, wow, I never put it in that perspective. Here's the point. The escapism from this crazy reality where time feels like it's sped up over the last 5-6 years. Anybody felt that? You just feel like the days are flying by and you feel like your reality is just, there's something off. And I've heard a lot of people talk about that and try to explain it and articulate what it is. And there's a bunch of different theories out there. I'm not going to get into exactly because I don't really know, but I know there's something that does feel off. And without the ability to have a sober mind and to be able to sit in some of this and be able to process it in a healthy manner and try to stay present too. That's one thing that not using alcohol in particular gives you. It gives you presence. It gives you the ability to respond versus react, to take a step back from things. And I think that's one of the biggest wins that we see as adults, as grown men, leaders of our family, business owners. We have to have the ability to be able to do that and to be able to control our emotions. So what happens if a country, okay, what happens if the United States, we actually start to treat a sober mind, we actually start to treat sobriety like a performance advantage instead of a punishment, because we got it all backwards, right? And the proof to that is when, a lot of the time when you tell people you don't drink, and it's getting more and more regular now where they go, oh man, that's awesome, man. So definitely the tides, they're shifting and you can feel it. But I think there's still a large sentiment that would say, you're praised for partying, for using substances. It's still looked upon as like it's not really a big deal for a lot of people. That's just what you do. That's just what culture says you do. You go to a football game, you get absolutely smashed. Maybe you try to sober up a little bit in the parking lot, and then you drive home and people laugh about it still today because it's quote unquote normal. And the punishment part of this is like, oh, you got in trouble now, and now you're starting to see some consequences here, and oh man, and people, they look down upon that once that starts to unravel. And so it's looked at as, but once you figure that out or that blows over, okay, cool, we're back to right on our normal thing. We're back at a game. We're back at, at home afterwards, watching the game at home with the food, and we're drinking and we're doing the partying thing. That's just the culture that we've built. Instead of saying, man, we could have a culture of men and women who are at the top of their game, who lead their businesses very well. They lead the work that they do, their vocation. They lead their families very well. They take care of their kids. They take care of their parents. They take care of their family. They take care of their neighbors. and they're at the top of their game in health. And when I say health, I mean overall health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And I'm not talking about perfection here. We know if you're a follower of Christ, perfection is impossible. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3:2-3. None of us are better than any other person. But the point is that we can strive to be more like Christ. We should be doing that every day. And it's, we're never going to get to the top and put the flag on the mountain, I think, but we're making a conscious effort in that. And in order to possess the ability to do that, we have to have a sober mind. We have to be in a state of consciousness. We have to be spiritually connected. I'm not talking about perfection. I want to say it again because it's very important. It's not anything about perfection. We're going to screw up. I screw up all the time. I'm not perfect. But the advantage of having a sober-minded individual, being a sober-minded guy like myself, I'll just speak for myself, like my mind, my ability to make decisions, to critically think, to be able to weigh pros and cons and calculate risk and, emotionally, physically, financially, all of it. Man, it's so much better and so much more on point than it was 10, 15 years ago when I was completely lost. And so can you imagine a society, a culture where, millions of Americans, millions of men, millions of women, millions of dads and moms and families, they're leading well like that. They're not escaping, they're conscious. And I would think that would be a very powerful nation, a very powerful community. If we just break it down into smaller bite-size areas to look at, let's just say your town you live in, your community you live in. Just imagine if people were not on drugs and we're not habitually drinking and we're not habitually out of shape and eating like crazy Americans can eat. I mean, you hear that a lot. It's, man, the food here, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother podcast probably, but you've heard RFK talk about that quite a bit. What is the ingredients we're eating? The pesticides sprayed on vegetables and, things being grown for us, fruits, and what are we putting in our bodies? And so America doesn't, here's what I'm saying. America doesn't necessarily just have a drug problem, an alcohol problem. It does. And there's a lot of layers to that, where the drug's coming in from, who's supporting it, who's supplying them, the money behind it. You want to find the truth to anything, just follow the money. It's one of the best things you can do. Best pieces of advice. Look who's funding what, look where it came from, look where it's going. And, we don't have, yes, it's a drug problem. It's an alcohol problem. Alcohol is legal. Do you find that ironic? Alcohol is legal. It's one of the only legal drugs, right? But yet it kills more than illicit drugs combined. You put all the illicit drugs combined, alcohol still kills more people, but it's legal. How does that make any sense? And so I think what we're looking at here is it's not so much just the alcohol, the drug problem. It's the coping problem. It's the ability to deal with life in this new digital age that we're living in, where AI is absolutely like, I look at some stuff that on social media or commercials or whatever, you don't know what is real and fake anymore. I mean, you can still kind of tell if you got a keen eye for it and you kind of know what to look for. There's ways you can tell, but it's really easy also to be, to be fooled by that and go, man, I don't know what I'm looking at here. Is this real? Is this fake? And so, and another point, a sober mind, the ability to calculate risk and critically think and be able to weigh, and come to an answer that supports facts. And, I feel like that's a lost art, but the ability to do that is so important, even in just this digital age with AI, because you can't just look at something now and go, oh my God, there's this video of this person and they said this or they did that. Is it even real? Is it even real? I mean, you don't know. So let's talk a little bit about overdose deaths, alcohol-related disease, prescription dependence, like on opiates. Doctors prescribe it, people get addicted to it. All those things, they didn't just spike randomly. They didn't just all of a sudden just happen, right? There was things that happened to help do that, help those grow. And some of those things, number one, it's the first one I thought of in the last 5-6 years, COVID. Think back about it. And I want to say too, the caveat to that, I did meet quite a few people who actually got sober during COVID or at the beginning of it, which was absolutely insane to me, because that was one of the biggest reasons and biggest ways people wanted to escape from this simulated thing that was happening that was completely crazy. Nobody knew what was going on in the very beginning, and a lot of people didn't figure it out till a little later, and some people still haven't figured it out, which is insane to me. I see people wearing masks still sometimes, and it absolutely blows my mind. But in the beginning, when they disconnected us, 6 feet, all that stuff, just crazy weird. The disconnection there, the disconnection from human contact, that was psychological, and it played into the dependence and overdose deaths and alcohol-related disease. It played into that disconnection. What's the opposite of addiction? It's connection. So how do you disconnect a population? How do you use that as a tool? How do you weaponize it? And that's an easy way to get people addicted and back out of their own conscious self, which is a very powerful tool if, shitty people use it correctly, which they did. But businesses shut down, right? My wife was a great example of that. Her salon just closed. It shut down. She couldn't work. It was very stressful for a lot of businesses. They lost their businesses, and the ones that fought back ended up getting sued in California. That's so crazy to me. Absolutely insane. I had a buddy who owned a great barber shop in Northern California, and he fought and he stayed open, and they tried to sue him. So think about the pressure that people were under, during COVID, the masks, I always called it, the masks was like the mascot, because if you didn't know that if we weren't bombarded with media coverage and all these fake rules and all this BS that was happening, you wouldn't have really known there was anything happening, because there was people that you were getting sick. Yeah, it was a flu. It was a flu. And you had people walking around with these masks on, driving in their cars. There's a very psychological, weapon in that is used to visually disconnect people. The face is so important. And I always said the mask was the mascot. The mask was the mascot, because if you didn't know, you would have never really knew anything was going on. And that was used as a weapon as well. Confusion, stress, sadness. I mean, just think about that. Think about 5-6 years ago when that happened. And you can see how overdose deaths, how alcohol-related disease, how prescription dependence could grow so much during that time. And then, I think about the kids too. I mean, we call our daughter a COVID kid, because, she was right in the prime of her life, at 10, 11 years old when this happened. And it had an effect. It had an effect, whether anyone wants to believe it or not. It affected our kids big time. And so, economic stress. Let's get into that a little bit too. We'll move on from the COVID stuff, but people are financially strapped. They're living check to check. And that is a big weight to bear if you're trying to lead your family well. And it can lead to the art of escapism. You just don't want to feel. I just want to disconnect. And I get it. I totally get it. It's tough some days, but that's the beautiful thing about the sober mind and being able to not depend on, those substances in order to deal with life is, it sucks feeling sometimes, but it's amazing feeling sometimes too, because at least you get to feel. We're human beings. We're designed to feel. That's what we're designed to do. We're not designed to numb out. That disconnects us from God. It makes us irrelevant in the sense of, finding our purpose in life and what we're supposed to do and serve one another and go, do the things, the day to day. We're disconnected from that. And so economic stress can bring on a whole new side of that. And it's very, very stressful. And I've been there many times in my life. And hey, money comes and goes. There's ups and downs. Sometimes you got a lot, sometimes you got a little. Sometimes you ain't got shit. It's the reality of it. And it can be a very, very stressful thing. And I think a lot of people are feeling that. We also talked about the social isolation, not getting out much. I talked a little bit about that with the COVID stuff, but I think even now that we've kind of moved past that, which they'd like us to all forget, but I will never forget. I can tell you that. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. Hopefully there's some accountability at some point one day, but that is yet to be seen really. But people stay home now. We're not going out as much. We're not, going out partying and going to clubs and, it's the generation has shifted. And a lot of that comes from, I do think the culture is changing, but I also think people are broke, man. Like I said, people live in check to check. They don't have the funds and the means to go out and go blow hundreds of dollars on a night out. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for people. And so they're choosing to stay home. And I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, the marijuana industry. There's a battle there, I think, between the alcohol industry and the marijuana industry, because I think the marijuana industry has taken some people from, former drinkers, that whole culture, and they're deciding, well, shoot, man, I can just stay home and smoke weed or whatever and take bong rips and just hang out, eat an edible, and I don't have to go out and do all that. So the culture is changing. And I'm not saying that's any better, by the way. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I do know. If I'm honest and I had to say, yeah, I would say I don't see marijuana killing, hundreds of thousands of people like alcohol does every year. I don't. And you don't hear about that. Now, is there effects from marijuana? Absolutely. In my personal experience, I do think it's a gateway drug. It was one of the first drugs that I tried as a kid. I was 14, 15 years old, smoking a joint at the park with my buddies. I thought the cake was talking to me. We went back to the cake's talking to me. It was just stupid, just a dumb kid, right? Trying it out though. And it led me down a path eventually, doing other things. Contrary to that, I believe there's a ton of medical benefits to things like CBD and hemp. Neurological, your gut, your regulation of your system, like just overall mental health things too, appetite, go down the list of things, joint pain. You have a lot of different, there's a lot of different things there. There's a lot of different ways you can frame it up. I think overall, if you just put it real simple, if I had to pick one that would say that's worse, alcohol seems to be the worst. But if we're using any type of drug, marijuana, cocaine, alcohol, crack cocaine, to escape, to numb out, that's an issue. Shopping, food, sex, go down the list of all the things. It's not just the illicit drugs and the alcohol. The point is, how do we get back to this high performing society, this high performing culture that takes care of themselves, that doesn't need all that stuff to be degraded and to be dumbed down and to be held captive in this digital reality that is absolutely strange and weird. And then with all of that, I think that this other point here I wanted to point out, there's a loss of purpose in that. There's a loss of meaning to life when you're just on that hamster wheel, just over and over and over. It feels like Groundhog Day. I remember that, waking up feeling the same. It's like the same thing over and over. I'm not going to do this today. And then you find yourself doing the same thing. And that purpose in life is so important. Like, what is your purpose? Maybe you've asked yourself that before. What is my purpose? Like, what am I here for? What are we all here for? What are we here to do? For me, I found a ton of purpose in being a father. I mean, what is more purposeful than that? Being a husband, but particularly a father. Like, There's nothing more amazing than that. Is it hard some days? Yeah, absolutely. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of different seasons, a lot of change as the kids get older. You know, it's tough some days, but it's the most amazing, purposeful thing I've ever found in my life. Always. There's always something that I can find that's beautiful in that, even on the tough days. And so when we find that purpose, whether it's being a father, whether it's raising a family, being a husband, creating a business, you know, helping, serving others, being active in your church or your men's group or your community, like being of service is a great purpose. You know, like how are you being of service? If you're feeling like you have lack of purpose, how are you being of service to others? Ask yourself that. And I guarantee you, if you start to look at life in that lens and you start to help other people a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be too. I mean, that's up to you. But when we start to look at life through that lens, we find purpose. And purpose gives us a reason to not disconnect, to not numb out, to not practice the art of escapism. And that can lead to healthier routines and healthier habits and rewiring the brain. So we're not doing the same old thing that we do, which a lot of guys get stuck in. So a numbed, let's just put it like this, and then we're going to move on to this next point here. A numbed society, a society that practices escapism, it's not meeting their goals. There's a lack of ambition there. It's much less focused. It's less resilient. It's easy to beat down and control. And we saw that in COVID, and we saw it get worse through COVID. You just take it. You just stay down mentally, and you take shit personal too, because you have no way to be able to filter through the feelings. So what do we do about this? Like, what do we do about this? What is the answer here? And I don't have all the answers. I don't know, but I am trying to point some of this out so we're aware of it and we're conscious in it. So maybe this policy shift, this great American recovery plan, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect and it's going to solve all the problems, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. I do. The language around addiction, the language around people who struggle in all aspects is changing, and that really matters to people. And let's talk a little bit about what this executive order emphasizes here. And the first thing is treatment over punishment. I talked about that in the very beginning. So for decades, we treated addiction like a crime. And there were crimes committed. Most crimes committed, people are intoxicated or on drugs. Most of them. Talk to anybody. I don't have the stats in front of me. I didn't pull that up. But I know that to be a fact. Most people have an issue with substances when they commit crimes. Arrests become sort of like an intervention, and then we throw them in jail, which some of them need to be in jail. I'm not arguing that point. But I think this treatment over punishment thing, it kind of frames it up a little bit different. It signals somewhat of a shift. If addiction is a health issue, right? If it is, in a lot of cases it is, the response should look more like support and healthcare, not just handcuffs. Are handcuffs necessary sometimes? Absolutely. So don't get me wrong. But I think we need to treat each case, respectfully with the circumstances. But if we blanket it overall and we start to look at it more from a healthcare perspective, that people actually genuinely need help, and there's not a lot of options for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't reach out either. So I want to point that out too. I know a couple people, I have all the resources in the world. People I know, people I could call, free meetings. I'm talking about 12-step groups, church groups, all these things. They don't want it. They don't want the help. And that's common too. And you'll see that. And it's sad. And especially when it's someone that you love and you know that you could help them probably bridge that gap and go get some help, but they don't want to take it. So you can have all the health care and all the support. If the people aren't willing, that's where it starts, number one. But at least we can do a better job of having those options available when someone is ready. But here's the uncomfortable part. And I think a lot of people forget this or they don't want to talk about it. Treatment only works if it's real treatment, not short-term, not insurance-driven checklists, but programs that not only get you off of the drugs, the alcohol, whatever it is that you're struggling with, that someone's struggling with, but we need programs that rebuild identity. We need programs that reshape habits, routines, and most importantly, gives somebody purpose. What is your purpose? Otherwise, we're just moving people from prison beds to treatment beds, and it's a revolving door and it's a revolving cycle, and people don't get the help they need. But what about recovery infrastructure? What does that look like? You can't recover in a vacuum. We tend to acknowledge that telling someone to go get sober, without some help is pretty tough sometimes, especially depending on their certain situation. Not everybody needs in-house help. Some people go to meetings. I've talked to a lot of people who just cold turkey quit. They didn't go to any meetings and they've been sober a long time. Every case is different. Everybody's different. Some people need to go away for a year and get help in a program. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not a one size fits all. But for the most case, I think most of the people I know, including my own self and my own experience, man, we needed some community. We needed some mentorship, some coaching. We needed some structure, and we needed purpose. We needed purpose. And, compassion without accountability just enables somebody more too. So we have to take a look at that too. You have to have support, but you also have to have accountability, or it's not going to work. Yes, we can have compassion. We have compassion. Of course we have compassion. But there has to be some accountability. There has to be some personal responsibility in there too. And that comes with the need to want to actually, get the help and try to stay on track. Is it perfect? No, people mess up. People mess up. Quick little drink there. The support thing is huge. It really is. I couldn't have done it on my own. I couldn't have done it without the support from my wife, from my family, from people I met along the way. My buddy Seth, who was sober before me. Those were huge, huge parts of that, of my own walk in that. And I could never do it alone. I see a lot of guys trying to do it alone. It's tough, man. It's tough trying to do it by yourself. You don't have to do it by yourself. Join the Victory Circle. Go to thatsoberguy.com. Hop in. It's a good place to start. No pressure. You can go in there, check out what the guys are posting, introduce yourself. Love to meet you. It's a great place to start. And then from there, maybe use that as a bridge to help get you somewhere in your community, in your group, a men's group at your church, a 12-step meeting. Just maybe, a group of old buddies that support you, that respect you. We do coaching here at That Sober Guy as well. You can go to thatsoberguy.com, fill out the coaching form. You got options. Let's talk about RFK's bigger message and the food quality. You can't talk about addiction without talking about what we're consuming, because food is an issue as well. Excuse me. Food is an issue as well. Ultra-processed food, ultra-processed sugar, seed oils. They literally hijack the same dopamine pathways as drugs, as alcohol. It's the same thing. Social media, the ping, the hit, real quick. Oh, the like. Like, that's the same type of thing. And as human beings, we become addicted to that as well, which is super unhealthy. Now, I don't eat chicken and broccoli every day. I'm not claiming to. But I'm definitely a lot more conscious about what I put in my body today, versus 10, 20 years ago. I love a good In-N-Out burger. It's damn good. One of my favorites. Do I eat it every day? No. Would I eat it every day? If I could, probably. But I'm not going to do that. Hypothetically, yes, because it's good. I'm sure I'd probably get sick of it after a minute, like anything. But we're not talking about perfection, the cheesy cliche. We're talking about progress. It's progress, not perfection. Perfection is the enemy of excellence. It is. But the food, man, is a big deal. And that kind of raises a bigger question. Are we medicating emotional and spiritual emptiness with food the same way we do with alcohol? Sobriety isn't about just what you quit, right? It's about what you do to stop poisoning yourself with this stuff daily. Like, how do you do that? It's not just about cutting it out, like it is, but what's next after that? What's next? How do we reframe that up? How do we redo that? What about the big pharma industry? The dependence on that. We've normalized being functionally Everyone has an issue. Everyone has a disease. I'm this, I'm that. I have this, I have that. And I don't mean disrespect. I know people actually do have stuff. But if you look at it from a broader perspective, they have literally normalized everybody having some sort of issue. And why is that? Why is that? Well, because there's a pill for it and they make money. Like I said earlier, follow the money. Instead of asking why people are anxious, why are you depressed? Why are you disconnected? Why is your mental health struggling? We just go, here's a pill. Here you go. Here's a pill. Have a pill. Just take this. It'll be great. Cause symptoms of diarrhea and eyeball bleeding and rectal dysfunction and all this weird shit. But cool, here's a pill. Go ahead. So we have to look at that differently. Like, how about a healthy diet? How about sobriety? How about some exercise? How about some sunlight? How about some fun? How about some purpose? How about some laughter? What about those things? We don't talk about those enough. Talking about them more these days. But functionally medicated became such a normalized thing in this huge, massive, weird healthcare industry. And I'm not anti-medicine. It's not what I'm saying at all. There's plenty of medicine that people need. I get it. I'm just saying the awareness of it and being conscious of it and being able to critically think about it and weigh calculated risk and look at things and research things and look at, if we're talking about prescriptions or medicine or drugs, legal drugs, whatever, what does it say? Vaccines, for instance, another great example. What does it say on the insert? What are they putting in that? What are some of the possible side effects of that? Are the side effects worse than the problem we're actually trying to fix? Can the problem we're trying to fix just be fixed with some exercise and some sunlight and some purpose? Those are the things that are so important that we really, as a society, as a culture, we have to start making those normalized. It's very simple, but the problem is there's not a lot of money in simple a lot of the time for some of these bigger corporations and underground corporations that are selling the street stuff as well. When pharmaceuticals become the first answer instead of like that should be a last resort, I feel like a lot of time for most people, not all people. I keep saying that because I want to make sure that you understand that I understand that sometimes there's a place for this stuff, but it shouldn't be normalized to the extent that it is today. It just shouldn't be. We risk treating symptoms, first before we just take a look at the lifestyle. Like, what about your past? Or, is social media driving some of this? Did you, or is it bringing things up from your past? Like, there's so many little elements to it that here's a pill, just go ahead. That doesn't work long term. Mental health used to mean resilience. It used to mean being able to handle things, coping, healthy ways. Now a lot of the time it means a diagnosis. And here's, we're going to put you dependent on this medicine because you're messed up. What if you're just not broken at all? I mean, yeah, in the eyes of God, yeah, we're broken. We're broken human beings. I get that. And I can accept that. But what if from a world standpoint, we're not broken? What if we're just how we're supposed to be? What if we accepted that? How powerful would that be? So sobriety, a sober mind, forces this conversation because when you remove alcohol, when you remove drugs, when you start eating a little bit healthier, when you start exercising a little bit, you start having friendships that are healthy, you start laughing again, everything else gets louder. Everything else gets more real. It gets more exciting. Anxiety, purpose, relationships, identity, all those things, they're all, and maybe they seem like they're all over the place, but you start to separate them and you can start to look and go, yeah, this is not really healthy over here. I'm starting to find some purpose over here, and that's helping to alleviate some of this anxiety over here. And wow, man, you know what? I've been talking, I've been reading a little bit, I've been connecting spiritually, and man, I'm feeling a little bit authentic right now. I'm feeling a little bit relieved, feeling a little bit like there's something more to live for, like there's something more to this life and to the afterlife. Man, and you know what? I'm starting to get a little more comfortable in my skin. I don't need to escape as much. A little bit at a time, it starts to decline. So sobriety is freedom. A sober mind is a sovereign mind. And that might be one of the most controversial ideas for a lot of people. Sobriety is freedom, not restriction. Because a lot of guys look at, oh man, you took this away. We didn't take it away. No, we didn't take it away. We actually gave you something so beautiful. But your routines, your mindset's still not able to see it like that. It's in the process of it. You feel it working. It's burning. It's a desire in your heart that you want. And it's coming around, but you got to stay with it. You got to stick with it. Reps. It's not restriction. We're not taking things away. You're free. You're sovereign. When you're sober, you're harder to manipulate. You're harder to control with ads, with substances, with politics, with culture. All of that stuff we're bombarded with on a daily basis. Just turn a news channel on. You'll lose your freaking mind if you're not strong, if you're not strong-minded, if you don't understand, if you're just escaping. A sober mind is much harder to sell bullshit to. It's much harder to numb. It's much harder to distract. And that's not moralizing, it's strategic. Clarity becomes a form of personal power, period. Think about that for a minute. You always wanted to be a superhero when you were a kid. Think about how much of a superhero you can be with a clear mind. So here's the big picture. Whether you agree with me, whether you think I'm full of shit, whether you're somewhere in the middle, it's good. That's what this is about. Being able to have discussions like this and help us think about it. I mean, I get to think about it as I'm delivering this stuff in the moment, and I think about it after. I usually don't listen to a lot of my own podcasts back, but sometimes I do. And I even see new thoughts and new things and growth from stuff, just listening to my own stuff sometimes, my own thoughts in my brain, and not just on the podcast, but just in life, man. I got a crazy mind. It's all over the place. It's always on. It's always thinking. It's always doing something. And I know it's annoying for some people that know me, but I can't help it. I try to shut it off sometimes. It's tough, but I do have the tools today to kind of help be able to do that quite a bit better, and I'm conscious of it at least. But this isn't about, and I should have said this in the beginning, this isn't a political party thing. It's not about endorsing a specific political party. Personally, if you really want to know my opinion, and I've said this before, it's probably been a while, the two-party system is an absolute illusion, and it has been for decades. So this isn't about this person or that person or loving this person and hating that person. It has nothing to do with that. It's about acknowledging that sobriety, discipline, and personal responsibility are re-entering the cultural conversations in and around us. And that's very, very important. Now, and here's just one quick example. I can't remember if I shared this with somebody or on a podcast in the last couple of weeks, but Jess and I went to dinner a couple of weeks ago, went to this nice little Italian spot. We sat outside and had a nice dinner. And I happened to look over after we sat down, and there was a party at 8 sitting at this table. There was 4 females and four dudes there. And they looked like they were probably all married couples or dating or whatever they were doing, but they were all out together. And they were, if I had to guess, I'd say they were somewhere in their 30s, maybe early mid 30s. Nice looking group of people. And I look over and I think one of the girls had a glass of wine, and one of the other girls might have had like a tea or something. I'm not sure. It was an espresso type of thing. So it could have, the wine was obviously wine. One of the other girls could have had something alcohol, I'm not sure, in there. But most importantly, I looked at the dudes. And not that the women are less important or anything, that came out wrong, but like I looked at the dudes because I wanted to see, what was going on. Were they getting jacked up? Were they partying? And they were all drinking non-alcoholic beers. And I just thought that was so interesting because you just don't see that as much as often. And it was eye-opening. And I went, wow, that is awesome. And I even told Jess, I said, man, look at that. Isn't that cool? We're starting to see more of that. And I think it's, to the point of re-entering this cultural conversation of sobriety, we're seeing it happen in real time, and it's cool. It really is. So the real debate here isn't if this shift is just happening. I just gave you an example. It's a small example, but it's an example. It's not if it's happening, it's whether people are ready to have an honest conversation about how much the modern culture today, especially with all of the BS that we're bombarded with, the psych ops and the manipulation and the just constant bombardment of misinformation and AI and what's real and what's not. It is weird. But it's showing us that this modern culture, the people are ready for it. We're ready to start experiencing the benefits that we get instead of keeping men distracted, medicated, numb, only thinking about things like sports. And I love sports, by the way. You guys know that if you listen to the show for a long time. But when sports is the only thing we focus on, going to games and we know every stat and we know everything, and we wear the jerseys with the grown men's name on the back that's not your name, and that's all we're thinking about, that's not healthy. That's distracted. And it's fun sometimes. I get it. Like I said, I love sports, but we have to be conscious of that. And if we're intoxicated all the time, if we're using substances to escape, we can't be conscious, and we can't be at the top of our game. We can't be high performers like God intended us to be. So as we wrap up today, let's just go over a couple things before we close out. A sober man isn't easier to control. He's much harder to distract. Let me say that one more time. A sober-minded man isn't easier to control. He's harder to distract. And that means even distract from ourselves, from the growth in self. And I think people want that. They genuinely want that. They want to be able to be in some sort of control of their life. It's very important. And we also know we got to give up control. We got to surrender. It's a weird thing. That doesn't make sense. It does when you're spiritually connected and when you open yourself up to God. It does. Sobriety isn't rebellion. Kind of is rebellion. It's kind of a F you to the man, I feel like, too. Like, you're not going to get me. But it's also a responsibility. And we have a responsibility to ourselves, to our families, to our kids, to our wives, to our parents, to our friends, to our people that we love. And we have that responsibility to our communities. So think about that. I hope something spoke to you today. Join the Victory Circle. It's our free men's digital community. And you can find that at thatsoberguy.com. And then also, before we wrap up today, I just want to say this too. If you're a high performing guy, you're an executive, you're a founder, you're a leader, and you're hearing this and you go, man, dude, I have some things together. I'm doing pretty dang good in a lot of areas, but I really need to reclaim my clarity. I need to reclaim my focus. I need some different leverage in my life. And alcohol is one thing that's really holding me back. And you've tried to do it by yourself and it just doesn't work. Trust me, I've been there. I tried to do it quite a few times by myself and I never had any long-term success with it. So that's why I created the Sober Executive Performance Reset. It's open now. It's a 12-week private coaching experience where we cut out the alcohol, we build habits that stick, and we get your execution very, very sharp, where it should be, your purpose. We map out what that looks like, personal life, business. So if you want to check that out, spaces are limited. You can go to thatsoberguy.com/coaching. That link will be in the show notes for you. You can check that out there as well. Thanks again for tuning into That Sober Guy podcast. If you enjoyed the show today, don't forget to share it with a friend. Take care. God bless. Keep your blood clean.